Nobody, even gifted people, can't be great at two things. Michael Jordan tried baseball. Beyonce tried acting. Bill Gates tried marriage. Listen, people cannot be great at two things, okay? That's just my rule. But what happens in football is you get Belichick, who is so respected for his football knowledge, you give him power in the draft. And he was a terrible drafter. Terrible. Kyle Shanahan has got so much aptitude as a coach. He is so respected. Half the league's using his schemes that I think he has way too much power in the building with personnel. And I'm not denying that the Niners have done very well with some late-round picks. Brock Purdy, Juwan Jennings, Kittle. I'm not denying that. But they have missed and reached on a lot of first, second, third-round picks. I'm not denying they've hit, like Hufanga at USC was a great player. Injuries he dropped. He's been a great player when he's healthy. I'm not denying that. Okay, I'm not denying that. He's no longer there, but I'm not denying that. But I listened to Kyle Shanahan. I heard a bite yesterday. It was on the Rich Eisen show, and he was talking about their theory on how they draft. And I'm like, I don't know. This doesn't sound like the way I would do it. Here you go.
It's hard to catch up with all those guys, so you got to depend on a lot of other people. One way we do it here is we give all the position coaches, a responsibility to make highlight tapes on everybody. And, they got to watch a lot of game tape to make those highlight tapes. And then I study their highlight tapes and I always tell them if I don't like their highlight tape, then I'm not going to watch anything after. So those guys got to put a lot of work into their highlight tape, because if they can impress you with that, I always say, what's the point of watching more? Which I would love to watch more, but that's the way you can get it done in a 2-month time frame. And when you do get it done, I definitely don't want to look at any more college ball until next February.
I don't know. Maybe that's the way to do it. But ask yourself this: what are the two best rosters in the NFL? In my opinion, Philly and Seattle. What do they have? Great and powerful general managers who can keep the coach at bay.
All right. I'm actually genuinely excited to dive into this, because this is such a layered discussion that everyone tends to form very strong opinions about very quickly, which I completely understand. I truly, truly do. I just feel like we aren't really being as charitable or as understanding toward the 49ers as we could be. But I think this stems from two slightly different perspectives. First off, the 49ers over the last, a little under 10 years or so have genuinely assembled some incredible rosters. The 49ers, because, I was really into football when I was younger, then I definitely went through a phase where I was just busy with a lot of other things. There was just a lot going on in my life. So I wasn't able to stay as locked into football as I would have liked. Then when I got reintegrated back into the NFL, being much more dialed in, it felt like the 49ers were easily one of the most intimidating teams out there. And they've naturally had their ups and downs, you always ebb and flow a bit. But they maintained that status right up until 2024. Okay? Right up until 2024. After they lost the Super Bowl in 2023, then in 2024 they got destroyed by injuries, and the team fell apart. What are you going to do? It happens. Then in 2025, they were wrecked by injuries again and were still one win away from securing the number 1 seed, home field advantage, and a first-round bye. Now, clearly, at that moment in time against the Seahawks, they weren't at their best. And you could say, well, look at what we did when we were healthy in the first game. And you could respond, yeah, but that was week 1. The Seahawks weren't really ready yet. Everyone's still trying to figure things out, and so on. But what can't be denied is that the 49ers would have been a substantially better team if they had been fully healthy. And yet look at the success they've still managed to achieve. Now, if this were an outlier team, if this were some random franchise where this kept happening, then maybe you wouldn't be so quick to give them the benefit of the doubt or hand them what some might call a participation trophy. But when you examine the 49ers' track record, you think, well, they are clearly a great organization, they clearly know what they're doing, they're clearly well managed. Look at the success they've had. You don't have to stretch to defend those points, right? The Commanders, in the opposite way, and I just made a video talking about the Commanders, in the opposite way, the Commanders were nothing, got Jaden Daniels, went to an NFC championship game, lost, and the following year they were banged up and went nowhere. And it's like, maybe you shouldn't give them the benefit of the doubt there because they haven't really earned it. you can't say, oh, well, if they had been healthy, they would have competed for a Super Bowl. It's like, I don't know, maybe. They haven't done anything to truly deserve that benefit of the doubt. The 49ers certainly have. So on the flip side, look at what they were able to accomplish despite all those injuries, and how they managed to stay afloat. That's genuinely impressive. It's not hard to imagine that if Warner, Bosa, Kittle, if some of those key guys were out there, they might have won more games and then would have become the #1 seed in the NFL. That's pretty great. But the problem is that they haven't won the Super Bowl. And that is why other teams like the Chiefs, like the Eagles, like the Rams are given an even greater benefit of the doubt, depending on the conversation we're having, whether it's about a quarterback, a coach, or an organization. But it's like, okay, you can be more forgiving because, well, the Eagles went to 2 Super Bowls and played great in both. Yeah, they lost one, but they still played great in both, and obviously they won one, right? The Rams, it's like they won their Super Bowl. And listen, maybe they're still clinging to that thread of benefit of the doubt. Like, hey, we won in 2021. And it's like, okay, but then you lost in 22, 23, 24, 25. You were supposedly the best team last year, and you didn't even reach the Super Bowl. You lost to the Seattle Seahawks. And now the Seattle Seahawks, from my viewpoint, kind of have a bit of a reputation where people say, yeah, they won, but I don't know. Colin doesn't even have them reaching the NFC Championship game this year. So it's just kind of like, you know. Are they go? ING to be the same? Are they truly great? Was it lightning in a bottle? Can you really rely on Sam Darnold long-term? Blah blah blah. You lost your coordinator, who is now becoming a head coach. So these conversations always interest me. And now we're trying to dissect Kyle Shanahan's actual draft process. I'm telling you right now, I beg you guys to practice a little humility. I beg you. Someone said this to me recently because he thinks he's too cool for school and says, Julian thinks he knows everything. And that's not even remotely true. That is not even close to the truth. I admit the things I don't know all the time, and I defer to higher authority constantly. But when we're talking about something like the draft process right now, for whatever reason, a lot of people are extremely confident about how to go about the draft process. What is right and what is wrong, how you're supposed to scout, how things are supposed to operate. And it's like, guys, evaluating talent is really hard. Figuring out what will work in the NFL is really hard. And I'm not saying what Shanahan is doing is correct. And I do agree with Colin in the sense that you can only be great at so many things. That has proven true in my own life and in my observations of other people's lives. And yeah, I do think it's a superpower when you can focus on your own lane. I think that's incredibly important. And I realized this while talking with other people who know football way more than I do. Boo. Because of my own personal experience, because of my own personal expertise, I'm like, oh, I offer insights or I offer a perspective that you don't have. And part of the reason you don't have that is because you actually know football too well. You know the X's and O's too deeply, so it's hard for you to see other things, to contemplate other factors, and to account for other variables. That's where someone like me comes in, right? And we see real-world examples of this all the time. We see elite coaches be terrible general managers. We see elite players be unbelievably bad owners, terrible coaches, awful GMs, whatever role they end up in. We've seen it repeatedly. Sometimes we see they're great, right? It's not an all-or-nothing thing. It's not black and white. But I hear Tom Brady give advice on how to be successful, and that always makes me laugh. Because it's just like, buddy, you're Tom Brady. Yeah, but did you see where he got drafted? He's Tom Brady. I don't care where he was drafted. He was always meant to be Tom Brady. That's why he became Tom Brady. I always laugh when I hear the LeBron thing, I'm not even supposed to be here. Of course you were. Of course you were. You're LeBron James. You are an absolute physical freak. Just because some of the outside world doubted you or overlooked you, but not really, because you were crowned at 12 years old, maybe even younger. So you were always supposed to be here. That doesn't mean it was going to be an easy path. Doesn't mean it was an easy path. But you were always meant to be here because you were literally born to become 6 feet 8 inches, 250 pounds. yeah, you had to put in the work. Yeah, you had to put in the effort. But you were always destined for that. That's why you became it. Just saying. And that does not mean that now you're automatically set up to be great or perfect at everything else. Anything else. So there is value in understanding, and I talk about this just as players, you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses. It is so important. I think about this a lot. And Colin highlighted this so beautifully years ago with Baker. He thinks he's better than he is, and that is a problem. Because it leads to mistakes. It leads to failures. And you have to understand what you can and can't do in any given moment. And that range can be very small or very large. It could be as small as, and this is what I was thinking about literally last night, watching basketball, watching someone go for a steal, and it was like, you weren't even close to getting that steal. You misunderstood what you were capable of in that moment. And because of that, you went for the steal, you didn't get it, and then you gave up an easy basket. That has direct, immediate consequences. Direct, immediate consequences. So you have to have a great understanding of what you can and can't do. And from there, that dictates the rest of your decision-making. So again, I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan and can't do it, or that he's not good at drafting, or that he has too much power, this or that. This is where things are always funny to me, too, because this is where we have to rely on people like Colin or any of the actual people who are legitimately talking to these insiders. Because it's so hard to know who truly holds the power. Who really has the influence inside the building. From the outside looking in, we have no legitimate way of truly knowing. For all we know, let's just use the Eagles because they're super controversial with Nick Sirianni. For all we know, Nick Sirianni has essentially zero power inside that building. Zero, zero, zero. For all we know, actually he has a ton of power. Not even over roster construction, because we know that's Howie, but in terms of the actual offense, hiring coaches, play calling, we don't really know. So the only way we could know is by listening to people who actually have insider information, people who are actually connected inside the building. Colin is actually talking to so-and-so, and he's like, yeah, you know, Nick Sirianni doesn't really have any say over the offense in terms of day-to-day operations. And it's like, okay. And you kind of have to trust those kinds of things. So when we hear about, you know, maybe Kyle Shanahan having too much power, too much of this, not enough of that, it's just like, it's always a little hard to really know. And then even when people make certain statements, you have to figure out, are they? Why just saying it, or is it actually based on legitimate conversations? So that's where a conversation like this gets messy. And we know that the 49ers have been an elite franchise year after year after year. Obviously they have some dips and dives, right? Just look at what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs, okay? So it happens to anyone. Happens to any team. Happens to any franchise. But it's just like, a team that was one game away, really almost one crazy play away, from having the number one seed during a year when they were decimated by injuries, to then just kind of dunk on them and say, are they falling behind the Seahawks and the Rams? I don't know, you tell me. How good would the Rams have been if Puka goes down? I know the answer. They couldn't win. In 24 when Puka went down, Matthew Stafford threw more interceptions than touchdowns and was awful. And they couldn't even beat teams like the Arizona Cardinals, okay? The Seahawks? If Jackson Smith-Njigba goes down, if Kenneth Walker goes down, like, I don't know. Are they just running through teams? Probably not. And to some variation, that's what the 49ers have been dealing with all season long. Now, I do think there is still, and I want to end here, I do think there is a heavy, perhaps too heavy, reliance on Christian McCaffrey. And that is something that Kyle Shanahan has been incredibly, first off, he's brilliant at that. Talk about strengths and weaknesses, it's an absolute strength for him. But it is something where, at this point, I'm kind of like, alright, I want to see what Kyle Shanahan can do beyond Christian McCaffrey. Because Christian McCaffrey's lifespan with the 49ers is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So if anything, that makes me more uncomfortable than anything else. But, you know, yeah, it's just interesting to see the levels of success that the 49ers have had over these years, and then have people kind of say, you're not really good at what you do. And it's like, well, of course they are. But in their own division, since the 49ers have been an elite, dangerous, suffocating team, two completely different teams in their own division went on to win a Super Bowl, and the 49ers haven't. that does matter. That really does. That is like if the Philadelphia Eagles went out and got Saquon Barkley and A.J. Brown, ran all that, paid Jalen Hurts all that money, and they did not win a Super Bowl, but the Dallas Cowboys did and the Washington Commanders did. You'd be like, what? Like, that becomes inexcusable. It becomes unacceptable. And you're like, wait a second. What? The Commanders hadn't done anything for years, right? So if the Commanders ended up beating the Eagles in 24, it's like, what? That's a problem. It's like, that's a problem. And so that is something that does weigh on the 49ers. And truthfully, it should to a degree. It should. But what I'm trying to really encourage people to do is not to swing to the extremes. Not to swing to the extremes. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about the 49ers? How do you feel about their approach in the draft, the explanation that Kyle Shanahan gave? Do you think that the 49ers are indeed falling behind the Seahawks, the Rams, etc.? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get into some discussions. Let's get into some debates, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. Please do consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here. I would absolutely love to see you be part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing that. Please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.